Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our June 24th, 2025 Board of County Commissioners 9 a.m. briefing session. Let the record reflect that all 5 commissioners are present. We are striking item number 2B from today's agenda that was printed, but we will go ahead and get started with Dr. Zink. I see she's on, so we will go ahead and get started.
Hi, good morning, everybody. I am, Ron, I'm going to start first with the 2 interlocal agreements. I don't know if you need to show them, but I'm actually here for a couple things this morning. One is to seek your approval to renew an interlocal agreement with the Spokane Regional Health District and begin a new one. They're related. So the renewal is the Child Fatality Multidisciplinary Case Review Panel. This is a group that is convened once a quarter to talk about child deaths and examine them for any preventable factors with a goal to eventually decreasing the number of child deaths. We've been engaged with the Spokane Regional Health District on this particular group for a while now. This is just renewing the agreement. And so basically it involves us providing data to the Spokane Regional Health District, providing access to our records. And then one of our pathologists participates on the panel to discuss the child deaths. They are also convening an adult fatality death review panel, and this is specifically to review deaths caused by overdose and suicide and withdrawal, so withdrawal from alcohol particularly or other drugs. And that one is just being stood up now, but it'll essentially be the same thing in that we would provide them with data, notify them when such deaths occur, and give them access to the case files for those particular deaths. And then I'm assuming that somebody from our office would also participate on the review panel. So those are the 2 agreements before you today. Any questions about the intent or what we'll be doing with those?
I don't think so. I'm not seeing anyone ask questions. I think it's a good thing to be able to share the data and get the data out there. So thank you.
Great. And then on the topic of overdoses, last time I appeared here, there were some follow-up questions on how Spokane County overdoses compare to the state, generally what the trends are. And so I've been in contact with the State Department of Health to follow up on those questions. And so that little PowerPoint that Ron had up initially is the results of that discussion. So this is just, again, data from the Department of Health. And then if we could go to the next slide, this is their definitions, how they gathered the data from the statewide data. So they're using death certificate information. And I think we've talked about before that when we enter the raw data into the system, and then the Department of Health codes the words that we put on the death certificate. And so the way they extract the data at the other end is from these codes. So the numbers, the X40 to X44, et cetera, those are the codes by which they classify the data, just for your for the data nerds out there, your information. And then they define Eastern Washington as the counties you see on the bottom line there: Adams, Asotin, Ferry, Garfield, Lincoln, Pend Oreille, Spokane, Stevens, and Whitman. So what we'll see in the coming slides is us compared to the Eastern Washington region, and then us compared to the state as a whole. Next slide. So the next 3 are just the numbers split out. So these are the Washington trends for overdose fatalities. You can see that they had a rise into the early part of 2023, kind of plateaued, and then overall have been trending down into the first quarter of 2025. Next slide. You can see that Eastern Washington had a rise again into the early part of 2022, 2023, and then sort of early 2024, and now kind of flattening off in the Eastern Washington region as a whole. Next slide. And then you see this is Spokane County. We're still trending upward, although the curve is somewhat flattening. We're still on the upswing in the first quarter 2025. Next slide. This one just shows you the superimposed lines. Obviously, Washington State has a much greater number of deaths than we do, but you can see again the trend lines. Next slide. Here we're breaking it out by the rate of deaths, so the number of deaths per 100,000, and these are, I think, the more striking ones, because here we can compare population to population, and it's really notable in these slides how much Spokane County is exceeding the trend lines for Eastern Washington and for the state as a whole. Again, the black line is the state, and you can see that that's heading downward, whereas we're still going on up. Next slide. This is the next couple are split out by drug. So these are the opioid involved overdose death rates again. So per 100,000, again, Spokane still trending upward. Next slide. These are synthetic opioids, so primarily fentanyl related deaths. Again, green line is us on the way up. Next slide. These are psychostimulants, so predominantly methamphetamine related deaths. Again, we are leading the state here still. Washington State flattening out, we're still going upward. Next slide. And then cocaine involved. I mentioned last time that we're seeing an uptick in cocaine deaths, and that again is in our region. So Eastern Washington generally also seeing a parallel line, but Washington State cocaine related deaths are also trending downward. Next slide. This is the last one, just giving you a map of the whole state so you can sort of see the breakout by county. We don't have the highest rate by county, but we are up there for sure. And just again for comparison, to see counties with similar rates and then counties with higher rates. The ones in gray are where the numbers are too low really to make any extrapolate any trends.
Doctor.
Follow up, and hopefully this will be interesting and or helpful to you guys as you go about your.
Thank you. Yeah, Doctor. I'm going to have Commissioner Walters go.
Yes.
Oh, thank you. This is really, I appreciate you. These are really easy to read graphs, and thank you for putting this together. It's not great news, but appreciate the data.
Yeah, right. It's not good news, but it's good to know it anyway.
Yes. And so what do you consider Eastern region?
So the Eastern region is Adams, Asotin, Ferry, Garfield, Lincoln, Ponderay, Spokane, Stevens, and Whitman.
Oh, okay.
And that's basically broken out by
got it. Okay.
I missed that one, sorry. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Singh, back on this slide, the one that's showing here, you had said that DOH used death certificates. Is that the only way you can calculate that? You presented it as if maybe there was another option. You said that's the method they use. Are there other methods that you can calculate the?
Well, so for the state data, we do need to rely on their extraction of the data. So I only have access to Spokane County, so I have the raw data for Spokane County. But to compare Spokane County to the state, this is the only way really to get at that comparison.
Okay. Thank you.
Questions? Well, we appreciate this. I think it's important. And it really does show, I mean, we need to have this information so we can really try to make change in our community, not thinking that knowing where our community is in comparison as we hear about trends going down, they're not going down here. And so we have to continue to fight and figure out what we can do to make a difference. So, but we can only do that with having the data. So we appreciate that coming from you. So, and kind of, I guess I would say, we may want to just quarterly, keep having you give us this same data just so we can see where we're trending, even if we can't, we're looking at the end of the year, the previous year for the state, but just to see where we're at as we continue to move through the year for us. So, so thank you.
Yep.
Appreciate all your efforts. It is how we're going to try to make a difference here in our community.
We have to know before we can fix.
Yes,
Right.
exactly.
Good. All right. Well, thank you all.
Thank you and have a great day.
You too.
Okay. Since we don't have Preston, that's gonna take us to Kat. Yep. Great.
Wow.
It has been a while.
Morning. Yeah. Excellent. Morning, Commissioners. Thank you for having me today. My name is Holly Stingline, and I work for your Washington State Department of Veteran Affairs as the Suicide Prevention Program Specialist here in Eastern Washington. Before I begin, I'd like to take a moment to thank our Commissioner Al French for his service in the United States Marine Corps. Your commitment to both our nation and our community is appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you for all the work you guys do. Just an incredible organization and stuff. The leadership is outstanding and we prove that. You prove that every time you go for a national award and you end up winning. My goodness. So we got the best of the best. So thank
You have the
you.
best of the best, that's for sure. So today I'm here to respectfully ask for your support in a small but meaningful act that could have a long-lasting impact, and that is by placing the 988 emblem on all Spokane County vehicles. The 988 Lifeline was launched in 2021 to provide 24/7 access to our trained mental health counselors. It's an essential tool in our effort to end suicide in our vulnerable populations, to include veterans, our first responders, and youth. Although many know about this, we still want to spread the word. And that's where this initiative comes in. In partnership with the Washington State Department of Licensing, a 988 emblem was developed to attach to vehicle license plates as a visible symbol of hope, support, and connection. Adding these to county vehicles sends a powerful message that Spokane County is committed to mental health, to destigmatizing crisis support, and to being there for our community. And we're not alone in this effort. In January 2024, the city of Lacey, Washington added 988 emblems to all of their city vehicles. And most recently, our mayor right here, Chris Kaminskis of Liberty Lake, purchased 100 emblems to put on all of our first responder vehicles and all of our county vehicles. These leaders have set an example, and Spokane County now has the opportunity to follow suit and take a stand for the well-being of its people. The cost is minimal. Each emblem costs $10 plus a one-time $8 processing fee. So for example, if you bought 50 vehicle emblems, it would be $508. If you bought 100 vehicle emblems, it'd be $1,008, and so on and so forth. There'd be no ongoing renewal fees, no additional upkeep. And funds for these emblems purchases go directly back into local suicide prevention programs with a strong focus on serving veterans and military families, a cause I know this board cares deeply about. I'm requesting your approval to purchase and install 988 emblems on all appropriate county-owned vehicles and to publicly support this initiative as a show of leadership and compassion. Today, let's make Spokane County part of this growing statewide movement and send a clear message. We see you, we care, and help is just 3 numbers away. Thank you so much for your time and your thoughtful consideration. Any questions?
I have a question for Mr. Simmons. How many county vehicles do we have?
Got a spot.
Yes.
This is stuff you ought to know on the
I
top of
know.
your head. You know,
Just
just
number that evaded me this morning, hundreds.
So,
Maybe between 100 and 900.
Okay.
Quite a few.
okay.
I think Public Works, probably the 200 range. I think that's Kat, if I recall right, that's what you were proposing.
So, yeah, so.
Talk with the commissioners about how you are looking at.
Sure. So there's obviously in our law enforcement fleet vehicles that may not necessarily want to put that on. We'd love that, but I think even Liberty Lake, a few of their undercover vehicles and things like that, they did not put the emblem on. So that's what I mean by eligible vehicles. Public Works is great because they're always out on the roads and they're out there. Any vehicles that are frequently being seen by citizens is kind of the idea, so.
So I'd like to make a motion that we direct Mr. Simmons to identify how many vehicles would be eligible for the placement of these emblems on it and come back to the board with an estimate of the cost so that we can approve that out of the balance, fund balance, so that we can demonstrate our support for our veterans and also our efforts to make sure that they know that they're being taken care of.
I don't think we need a motion. I think we could direct him to do it, because then I gotta.
You have the head nods to.
I really want to be real clear about our support for our veterans.
Sorry, Scott, I didn't mean to make more work for you.
Well, actually, Kat already had come up with an idea. You're all aware that each year the county places some of our property taxes out of the general fund into veteran services to support all their efforts. And there are sufficient funds in there that Kat is proposing to use some of those funds
Yep.
to purchase, I think it was up to like 200 or so.
Yeah, I was waiting to hear what
Yeah.
the number is, but we definitely have the budget and vet services to cover the costs, so that you're not looking at taking it out of your reserves or anything.
So with that, I
And it
will,
could be a combined cost or.
Yep.
Sure.
So I think that those are the decisions we need to make.
Sure.
But we've got to have the information.
so I can come back and share with the board kind of eligible vehicles that might be utilized for this and work with Kat and report back to you.
Yeah, no, Scott and I were out and had a meeting with Mayor Canisius out at Liberty Lake, and so she had talked about this, so we came back and Scott to see what we can do and how we can do it, so I think it's a really great idea.
Well, I mean, even if there's 900 vehicles, that's $9,000. That's not. It's totally worth it. It's especially out of our program, I can guarantee it is, so.
So if I walk down the end of the hall to Department of Licensing, I can get this.
No, we'll
Yeah.
provide the state will provide the emblems directly to.
Okay,
He's talking about his.
Oh, for
personal
you.
call.
yes.
Yes, Department of Licensing has them. They don't always, if you want 9,000, they're gonna need a heads up. They don't have that many on hand.
But if you buy one for your car.
And Mayor Kaminskas, she had to wait because they only had, I think, 50 on hand. So you definitely want to give them a heads up. But one on your car, yes, they should have at least, I'm assuming 30, 40 on hand, and then they'll order them and have more.
About how many cars I've got.
The 980 has been kind of a national sideline, so it's, it's really, I mean, we're pushing this for veterans because it's such a huge issue in the veterans community, but it's also for anybody. So
Correct.
that's really important. I think it is a great way to get the message out for everyone.
And the funds stay local.
It's great, so. I think it's exciting. When Chris, the Mayor Kaminskas was talking about it, we were like, let's look into this and see what we can do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So do you want to talk about your latest recognition?
Yes, please do, as we.
I'm very happy. The Spokane County Regional Veteran Services has won their third National Achievement Award from NACO. Just for absolute best practices, what we've done regarding the doubling of VA claims awards in our area, increasing access and everything we've done as far as our outreach and that. So just, my team is just amazing. I can't say enough about them. They're on top of their game. So.
No, and truly, you are leading the way, and at the national level, you'll be back at NACO as you are chairing one of the committee.
Two, actually. Oh, I guess, yes. So I'm vice chair on the Military and Veteran Services Committee at NACO. And this year at the annual conference, I'll be presenting on 3 resolutions, which I've sent to you guys that we're looking to policy resolutions we're looking to present to the Human Services and Education Committee. So, yeah, we'll see.
We'll definitely want to be highlighting at the state of the county as the theme will be leading the way, is Spokane County. And so this is going to be my pitch to anyone here. If you've got ideas, please get them to us as we're trying to finalize what we're going to be talking about. So, but we definitely want to be highlighting the things that Spokane County is doing and leading the way. So thank you, Kat, because it's a lot of it's because of you.
Well, thank you. Leaders only as good as the team they have. So I think they've done a phenomenal job. I'm honestly honored and blessed to be able to be back with the team full time and doing really, really good work. And we're still praying about that HVRP grant, so I got notice from DOL that they're not gonna release awardees until middle of July, so they pushed back their deadline, but we'll see. All right, thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that's gonna take us to Scott Chesney.
Good morning, Commissioner. We are returning to update you on a facility request that is an essential public facility. It's being proposed for the city of Spokane Valley. We were here earlier this year with the initial request, considering it as one of local significance. Commissioner Cooney, you asked us to do some more research on that. We have done so. And I don't want to say painful research, but it took a lot of digging to scrape past the initial layers of what was here. But we have come to the conclusion that this is a facility that will be recruiting and taking patients from across the state, not just in the county. And the degree of significance of those patients is higher than was originally or relayed to us. So we're coming to you today. You've got a staff report. We are making a recommendation to you that you consider this of a regional or county significance in a resolution that we will have for you at your July 8th legislative meeting. In which case that will start the process of the applicant going through the EPF guidelines for facilitation or for facility analysis, quantitative analysis. It will come back to you for a public hearing to make a determination on 3 finalist sites. Once the finalist sites are in place, it will then go, if the city of the valley still is the preferred receiving site, it will ultimately get permitted at the local level. But it will, when you go into the regional and county level, it will come back to you for the public.
So it comes back to us because I just had a meeting with one of the hospitals and they had no idea about this. And again, if we're gonna determine that something is of regional significance, I would think that we would be talking to the other providers in the area to know that this is a significant need that needs to be met. As we know, Multicare is putting a facility, they're changing one of the floors they're taking us to add more mental health beds, in their facility. And so that's why I just, if we're gonna make it that, we need to make sure that everybody's aware and talking and knows this is the
Yes.
need.
By the EPF process that your predecessors adopted some time ago, the onus falls on the applicant to go through that process and make those initial connections, produce the analysis. It is not a staff function at this point. It is on them to produce that for our review. And then in that public hearing, we will advertise that the way we would for anything else, which will include hospitals and interested parties. First step, and like I said, the resolution will be before you on July 8th, and then we will notify the applicant and go from there. No timeline there is required, so it's up to them to put together the analysis and bring it back to us.
So the resolution is to set the public hearing.
No, the resolution is to find that this has regional or countywide significance and direct the applicant to use the EPF citing guidelines to go through the analysis.
Okay.
Because initially they were trying to not go through that process.
Local.
It was a local impact. It doesn't require anything other than handing it to the local jurisdiction for their own permitting. In this case, though, the EPF guidelines go through a fairly extensive analysis for facility and for quantitative analysis. It will take some effort to do that, to produce a variety of sites, and then a choice of 3 finalists have to come back to you, and that's when you'll hold your public hearing.
So, but there's the local significance, there's a regional, is there anything big, is there statewide significant?
Yes,
There is that process.
There are 3 levels, statewide. The county/regional is the middle one, and then local significance is the smaller one. Group homes fall clearly into both local and regional significance, and the impacts are basically how wide are you casting a net for patients or customers, And what's the severity of that? I mean, that severity determines is it truly a local impact that's only affecting the property owners that are adjacent to the facility, for example? Or could it have broader impacts? And, you know, further research here has proven that to have broader impacts in our opinion.
So I've been through this process a number of times, but refresh my memory with regard to who picks the final 3 sites. Is that the board or the applicant?
No, it'll come to you for, as my understanding, the number of sites could be 5, 6, 7. The board will narrow that to 3 sites and then ultimately make a preferred site recommendation after that.
I couldn't remember where the board stepped into the process of identifying those sites.
And what we will do for you when we get to that point is a score sheet, a matrix, based on all of these analyses, how they're weighted, and then that will help guide your decision.
So we can't let the local. So like right now they have a place within the city of Spokane Valley, so we can't just say, we're not gonna make the determination, we're gonna let the city of Spokane Valley go through the process.
If you wish to do that, you would have to find that this only has a local impact. And what we've found in our research and it, you know, the applicant has been forthcoming toward the end of this and letting us know where the scope and scale of this is, and that kicks it clearly into the county/regional impact.
What type of criteria is on that scoring matrix? You said you'll bring us.
And this was also really helpful for our staff working with community development and George and some of his people on that side. Public safety, availability of support services, environmental impact, distribution equity, how many of these are around it, land use designations, economic impacts, aesthetic impacts, and mitigatability are the ones that are mentioned specifically in the criteria. So all of those will be evaluated on a weighted score for your consideration.
Yes. And how do we know that this is needed here?
That's a good question.
I mean, that's my question is, you know, for us locally, having inpatient mental
Yes.
health beds, again, I've got multi-care that is putting a floor together for that purpose. We have beds available in the Northwest Behavioral Health. So who is doing that analysis for us to even make the decision that this is needed?
The initial analysis is done by the applicant using the criteria in the adopted EPF guidelines. We would be evaluating that in the bigger context of what's the demand overall. This is a private applicant. It's entirely possible that the determination that this is of regional significance may be enough to say that they don't want to pursue the project. Because it goes from moving directly into a conditional use permit with the city of the Valley into this much more extensive analysis piece that is checked and double checked. That's an expensive body of work, and that's why it's there.
I'm concerned as we've seen in other communities where some similar facility, I think I talked about up in Chewela happened. That was a means of getting people out of Western State Hospital into a different facility.
And the group has included Western State and Eastern State and other, facilities in the state in addition to Spokane County facilities. That's what kicked it into the broader definition.
I don't think we've done a regional significance since I've been here. Most of the ones that have come in front, they've all, actually, I think every single one has been deemed local significance. So I haven't done a regional, I think, since
The only one that I can think I remember, but certainly predated me, is the Geiger jail discussion of buying the land out on the West Plains. I think that probably was on a regional basis.
And citing the expanded jail facility on this property, we had to go back and revisit that designation, but we had to go through that initially to get the siting here. Right? Yep, thank you. So, yeah, like I said, I've been through it a number of times.
The process is
I think-
here. Sorry. The process is here specifically for facilities that most places would prefer not to have, and this allows you a more fair evaluation of where they should go.
If it meets the, I'm sorry.
So just in reading through one of the memos in here, it says regional significance facilities include but are not limited to, and it gives a list: general aviation airports, regional transportation facilities, county correctional. It says regional social and health services such as inpatient hospitals, mental health facilities, substance abuse treatment centers, and group homes. Is that statutory, that list? Or does that come from like our board policy?
Commissioner, I don't know, it reads very much like it exists in the statute somewhere, but I don't know the answer.
Just curious.
We can find the answer out for you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and the risk for the applicant is if you're designated to go through this and you don't go through it, you try and treat it as local, then the permit can be appealed. And when it gets appealed, then they go back to the language and say, oops, start over. So eliminate that risk, you're better off going through the process.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Commissioners.
Appreciate it. And that takes to Chief Milberg.
Well, good morning.
Good morning.
We are here asking for a renewal on our on our signing bonus for our corrections officers and for our we've had it in place since 2021. So far up to this point, we've used it 84 times, and I had just asked this. I know that question's come up in the past. We've only had 2 people, what I would say is abuse it for us out of the 84, that they've left on their own in very short time and went somewhere else, if you'd call that abuse. So one went to, I think one went to patrol and one went to another agency in short order. So it's pretty good out of the 84. So and total cost up to this point, $636,000. So next slide, please.
Total cost of since.
All of it
inception.
since 21, all of it since 2021. So here's a breakdown of kind of how we've used it up to this point. Up to this point, we've spent $107,000 this year up to date. We're projecting about 10 more hires this year.
Up to about 12
Up to about
if the
12.
market treats as well.
So, and so we can go back and go next slide. That's 24, 23, 22. So I think we've been successful at it, but as you see with the back in 21, we were about 35 vacancies. Right now, today, we're at 20 corrections officer vacancies. Mid-July, in 3 weeks, we're going to be back up to 23. We're losing 3 more in the next 3 weeks.
How many total corrections officers? What's the maximum authorized number of positions?
218.
Okay.
18, and then 20 are vacant.
Mid-July will be at 23 vacant.
Okay. And you were at 30 something when?
Right, just right post-COVID, we're at 35. I think those are high. Yep. So we are going in the right direction, but it's 2 steps forward, 1 step back kind of thing every time we lose. So we're losing 2 to patrol, 2 to city patrol in the middle of the summer, and 1 retirement. So next slide, please.
With this new request, we're asking to change our structure and how this is paid out, just to make us more attractive. We're going to keep the corrections officer for entry at 10,000 as paid. Previously had been paid half day 1 and then half at the end of year 1. with the request of this, we're asking for this to be changed to day one, 3,000. At the middle of the year one, 3,000, and then at the end of that completion of year one, at a 4,000 payout. For our corrections officers, both entry and lateral, those dollar amounts are going to stay the same. We are asking for an increase for our cooks. That is the hardest position for us currently to hire for, and just trying to incentivize getting the right people in for us in our kitchen. So we're asking for an increase there from 3,500 to 10,000.
We have 3 vacancies and we hired the last hires for cooks, 2 hires about 2 years ago. So we've had 3 vacancies since then. So it's out of the 11 spots.
On average, we will net 1 person a year for cooks. Next slide, please.
Okay. Overtime, so the idea obviously as we fill these spots, we'll reduce overtime. Right now, we're spending about just under $4 million a year. So a lot of the vacancies along with the other things that drive our overtime, such as high risk transports and searches and training and all the other. So the idea is to continue to fill spots to reduce overtime. So. Questions?
So from when you had 35 vacancies now, 1 has overtime come down because there's been progress in filling more positions.
It has not, it's gone up slightly. I think we were around $3 million. I don't have it right in front of me. We were about 3 million at that time and it's getting closer to 4 now. A lot of other things driving that. One of the things right now is although we have only 20 vacancies now, we still have 15 people in training right now today. So we're constantly in perpetual training. So we're never, even though we show 20 vacancies, really 35 that aren't fully up, that are trained fully filling spots. So this whole time, because we hire every quarter, we're never not training new hires as well. So I think the revolving doors letters is a lot of that. And then a lot of the other drivers, 24 hours of in-service mandated by the state. So that's around $300,000 to train all of our staff, which is all done on overtime. It's around $300,000 a year. Talked about it last year for budget. Increase in outside medical transports, dialysis, chemotherapy, where we take people multiple times a week. I don't have the data in front of me. We did present it last year when we were going through the budget process, but a lot of the drivers of overtime are some of those other things, not just vacancies. We don't have staff. There's not staff on to take hospital transports. That's all. Every time you take some hospital, after hours, during the day, it's overtime.
Do you expect that as the 15 do get kind of trained up, you may see a decline?
I believe if we get, I mean,
Knock on wood.
knock on wood, I wouldn't want, I mean, we haven't been to that spot where we're 10 vacancies. I don't think if we get close to that spot, we'll actually have to fill all 20 vacancies. I think if we're all up to speed, all trained, I think if we got somewhere in the 10 range, we would be very adequately staffed. I think we haven't been there for my whole career. We have since, and we have layoffs back in 2009 and 10. We've been playing catch up on staffing ever since. So I think if we were fully staffed and we had all the positions training, we'd be in a spot. We just haven't been there before. As long as I've been coming here. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Okay, I see Ashley, you raised your hand.
Yeah, I just wanted to say from an HR perspective, this is a department and a bonus request that we continue to support. Especially adding the cooks at a higher level. We see very few applicants, and when we do see applicants, we really struggle to get them to return their paperwork and get through the full interview process. And then additionally, just with the continuation of turnover with detention, to continue to get more applicants to come through, we do support the bonus. There are many other entities with corrections specifically that I think Don has on maybe a future slide, but they are also still using a bonus. So this is one group across the counties that we're not seeing get rid of their bonuses while most of the others departments have stopped using it. Detention is one that we're still consistently seeing across multiple states to try and capture corrections officers, cooks, technical assistants. So I just wanted to put in a plug. I know I did a couple weeks ago, but I wanted to make sure that you guys were all aware that I do still support this department continuing their full sign-on bonuses.
Thank you, Ashley.
Thank you.
And we are not asking to renew it for the DSTAs. We have one in background right now, and I think we'll leave 2 spots vacant given the current budget issues we're dealing with. So we're not asking to renew it for DSTAs because we hope to be fully staffed this year.
Next slide, please. For the remainder of 2025, this is the outlook. If it was to be the perfect for us for hiring, looking at hopefully hiring an additional 12 corrections officers. There may be a mix of some laterals that may take away from the entry level. We do have had some recent interest from some lateral candidates that I've been in communication with. And then with the cooks, in a perfect world, I'd like to see 2, but we're going to be comfortable with getting 1 through the door. We have that 1 that we're hopefully going to be able to hire here in short order. That's been responsive to us with getting back with a personal history statement and everything that we typically don't see. Next slide, please. As we've known and see in the public safety workforce, it's very competitive and qualified candidates are scarce. Most of the candidates that we are communicating with, be it through our hiring process or in a multiple offer scenario. So with having sign bonus, it makes us an attractive option for them. Currently, these are the agencies in Washington State that are still offering sign-on bonuses for corrections officers, and then the dollar amounts that they're currently offering. Next slide, please. And just over these next couple slides, just communicating and showing the amount of numbers that we are processing within our hiring and training department. We've seen 135 applications come in for corrections officer, and we've hired 10 of those. For our technical assistants, we've had 102 that we've processed, with 1 being hired. And then our biggest one that we see with the amount of applications received with the cooks, we've received 154 applications. We've had 28 that have returned for a panel interview, and we've been able to hire 0 year to date. And just with on the next slide, please.
So
Yes.
what's your explanation for not, out of that many candidates not being able to find 1?
Oh, I have a breakdown for you on the next slide to help
Okay.
explain the what and the why. So with our cook applicants, out of the 28 that we've had return for a panel interview, we've had 11 fail that interview process. We've had 9 that are no-shows. We had 5 that have passed but failed to return their personal history statement so we can do a thorough background. And then we've had 1 fail background investigation. And then we have 2 pending that background interview. We have 1 that we're pretty close to being able to bring in for an interview. The biggest hurdle for us with cooks is getting the right people to come in. And it's a position that supervises inmates. And we want to make sure that we're bringing the right person in so that we can have a person that's trustworthy to be in that supervision of inmates. Yes.
I mean, that's the breakdown of the 28 that the panel interview accepted, but that's a huge drop off from the 154. So what was the 130 or so in there that why didn't they get interviewed? I mean, that's a massive amount of people applying for a cook job.
No response. So what we have.
So it's not that you just decided based on the application, we're not even gonna offer an interview.
So a good portion of those have no response. We do have some that they do an initial screening that don't meet the requirement.
Okay.
And then, but if the majority of that large number are fail to respond back to us.
Wow.
And even if you go to the previous page, corrections officers, a lot of them sign up for public safety testing, but they put a lot of different agencies, including law enforcement agencies, and we're not always their first choice. And so they can add us. So we are at all the public safety testing events, and we ask them to put in for us and we'll reach out to them, but a lot of times they're already being processed for law enforcement jobs.
So this question for Ashley. For unemployment payments, do you still have to demonstrate that you are actively looking for a job?
Yes, and we see that quite a bit where we'll get people that just apply, right? But it doesn't necessarily mean that they're gonna respond when we call them. Because we're likely just a check in the box.
Yeah, they're just meeting a quota to be able to continue their unemployment payments. Okay, thank you.
That's the totality of our PowerPoint. Is there any questions or concerns that we can answer further for you?
No,
I assume paid for by unspent salary in terms of budget.
Full salary. So it looks like something around $200,000, which is about 2 unfilled sealed positions. Hopefully we fill the positions.
So maybe for Jeff, does this impact the salary recapture strategy that the budget office has been using to get a handle on some of those unspent salary dollars across different departments?
I'll answer if Jeff doesn't.
John.
Yes, it's we've the way Jeff had worked back with Mike and Don is we haven't recaptured all of the CO vacant positions. We worked with Don to see how many more he might be filling between now and the end of the year, so that we don't get in a situation where money has been removed out. But again, if we find that money has been moved out and we need to put back in to cover these things, we've got to go do that.
But we're not anticipating to have to do that currently.
Not right now. Unless Don gets wildly successful with his team
Well,
being able to hire more.
When we hope so, but we projected the end of last year that the best case scenario, we would go another 10 positive. So, I mean, because we are losing, for every 2 we hire, we lose 1. I mean, so we are hoping at the best case when we budgeted last year was to get within, at that point, we were 18 vacancies. We were hoping we would get within 8, with 8 total vacancies. That was what we projected at the end of last year.
So we have a plan for the rest of this year. On paper, it makes sense that it'll work, but until we try it in person, we'll see if it's successful or not.
We're hiring more frequently with smaller groups, trying to not lose them to other agencies. So we're trying to hire every month for the rest of the year. We'll see. It causes a lot of problems with training and putting them together, but we're going to give it a shot. So.
I think it's also important that we don't, and Don's doing this, not looking at this in isolation. So yes, you can say, hey, we'll be okay with salaries and wages, but obviously the detention services budget is much broader than that. So Don has to look at the entirety of the budget to make sure this ask, and assuming it gets executed against, can still be absorbed within current budget. So
We're trying.
I think that's a good idea, because if you wait too long, to get people into that next, like, let's say you have them wait 2 months till you're doing a training,
Yes.
they're gonna go take another position.
And in the past, it worked. Right now, the job market's so competitive, we're losing people so much. So
Okay.
there's just a lot of
Good luck with
offers
that,
out
with
there.
that. Better.
So, well, thank you.
thank you, appreciate it. Necessary, so.
Yeah, just.
Okay. Yeah, and we got several for you.
Yep. Good morning. So just a couple things here. First one would be I'll make sure I get this right. The sign-on bonus update. As you remember, I met a couple weeks ago and talked about modifying the sign-on bonus to being just some accrued time for laterals. After working with Ashley and talking to the board, we changed it tentatively to 120 hours of vacation and 120 hours of sick time for lateral. Initially, the ask was to have only for 5-year laterals, so people who had been commissioned law enforcement for 5 years. The sheriff asked that I request that we drop that down to 2 years, so he has a little bit more flexibility, but it would not cover anyone who was a lateral with 2 years or less than 2 years experience, so no provisional laterals or no kind of newer employees. They'd all be employees that have been around for a little while, so. He thinks 2 years kind of a good spot. So if the board's okay with that, this will be going to effect, I believe, beginning of July.
Didn't we say 90 each? Cause the
Uh,
ask was 180. It was
Yeah.
180 for sick, 180 for vacation. I thought you had said to cut them in half, so it was 90. And maybe I'm remembering that wrong.
This is Ashley sent me 120, so
Okay.
it was here, so I thought
Okay.
that, yeah.
Maybe
Yeah, I think it was 120 because that was like 3 weeks. Right,
Because 180 days would be about 14 days or 15 days around 12-hour shifts, and so 120 would be 10, something like that, 11. Almost 2 weeks.
it takes it to about 4 weeks total.
Yes.
Okay, Ashley.
Yeah, you guys had discussed both options, so both of your memories are correct. Where we had landed was the 120 hours is what had been the final conversation. So I did update the policy with the 120 at the 5 years. Kevin's requesting and the sheriff's requesting to move it to the 2 years, which I'm happy to update the policy for resolution next week in the event that you're all in agreement with that.
Have we run any sort of numbers just to see what's the value of this? So if someone carries this and cashes it out, I mean, what's the cash value of that when someone utilizes 120 a vacation? Somebody has to be called in on overtime. I mean, what's the cost to that? I mean, I know there's tons of different scenarios because you never know when they're gonna use them. Are they gonna cash them out? How long they're gonna stay, with the department? But I mean, do we have any ideas on sort of what in dollars, what this costs the county?
So I would defer to Kevin and Chris, their finance group. We don't run those numbers for them. So I know that there were, Kevin, at some point you guys had kind of put those numbers together. I'm not sure if you have those right now.
I don't have them with me, but we did kind of put the numbers. The problem is, like you said, the DSA contract after a year of employment, so after their probation, gives them the authority, or they can sell back 80 hours. They will accrue approximately that or close to that by the time they're able to sell back anyway. So if they sold back all their vacation time, they could sell back 80 hours, and that's the cap. And that's after their first year of employment or after they're off probation. So the number wouldn't change. I mean, now they would still have vacation time in their bank because of this, but they wouldn't be able to sell these back. I think we put a cap on it for the first year or the first 2 years, this particular bank. And then also, as far as taking vacation time and covering it with overtime, we do our best to mitigate. Like I said, we restrict the amount of people. We only have to have one person on vacation at a time according to contract. If another person puts in a vacation day and it takes us to minimum staffing, those requests are denied generally. And so vacation doesn't really drive overtime. It's the other stuff that's calling in sick, it's injuries, it's unforeseen training, that kind of stuff that drives protests.
What is 80 hours of vacation sold back cost?
Well, let me see here. I'll give you a real quick, this is about, I can't be right. About $3,000, $3,500. And that's for a step 5 deputy. I'm taking an average step 5 deputy, which would be anything above 8 years, I believe. I think their wage is about 99,000 a year.
Okay, so Ashley, I've got a question. Since we were talking about 5 years and the sheriff wants to go down to 2 years, I don't want to make this an accounting nightmare. So it's like, I mean, because what I'd love to say is, could we do at 2 years, you only get the 90 hours, at 5, if it's a 5 year, then you get the 120 hours. But I don't know if that's going to become an accounting nightmare because it's kind
The
of.
argument's gonna be, but I have 4.
Yeah.
Oh,
that's
what.
I'm saying 2 to 5 years would be 90, and then 5 years and above would be 120. But I just don't know what that would be from HR, because I think it's gonna all have to be off book, correct?
Yeah, so the more chunks that we do this in, the more of a nightmare it becomes, right? Because then we have to create different leave plans. So off book, it will occur until we're able to get into Workday. And Workday, we should be able to create this, but it's a beast to stand up even with one chunk the way that it is. So if we do start doing it on a tiered system, it's going to be incredibly difficult to manage. The other thing would be then having to which we do is we bring them in for where we place them in salary, but it'll also be making sure that we're analyzing for all the candidates. Are you 2 years, 5 years, 8 years, right? Where are we going to stick you in this? Is it an accrual? Is it not? So it does become far more complex if we start doing different levels based on that short of a year of period.
So if somebody works for 2 years, how many hours have they accumulated in sick and vacation?
Wow.
'Cause I think that's then the determination if that 2 year versus a 5.
Ashley, do you remember if the DSA contract, the first 2 years, if it's
I
12
have to
hours of
look.
accrual? I think it's 12 hours a month.
I have to go pull the contracts. I have too many to remember,
Yeah.
but I can pull that data out of the contract really quick.
Because what I don't want is that a lateral is gonna get more in vacation than someone who's worked for 2 years.
I think it would be about 288 hours of vacation time. I think it's 12 hours per month. I believe, and then it goes up actually, but I think that's not till step 3 or 4. We've changed it so many times. I used to know the old one. I used to know the old contract, but I don't remember this one for some reason. So as far as accruals go,
You have to remember all the.
it's about 12. So it'd be about 200 and when I say 288 hours.
I'm pulling up the contract right now. I'll find it for you guys.
You're
in just a minute.
gonna prove me wrong on live TV.
You'll probably be really close, honestly, but I'll look for you guys.
I mean, that's why I just want to make sure that we're not giving more than, which would mean that I would move it to 3 years instead of 2, but
Honestly, all this is, we've been successful at hiring. I don't know how much the hiring bonus has driven that. I don't think there's any way to know. You could do surveys, but how do you know if someone's gonna lateral here or get hired here because of a bonus or because we're the first person to offer them a job? I don't know. This is so we have some sort of incentive to put on our pamphlets that we send out and our information we send out to continue, enticing laterals to apply here. So we have a steady flow of people to hire from, because we're gonna need to hire even a conservative, 10 to 15 people a year. It's just the way it is, yeah. And we would like the balance. We would like a balance of entry level to laterals. And sometimes when you're leaving your job, you have to entice people to leave their job. And when they may want to move to Idaho, they may have family issues or whatever. And we're just hoping that this is something that incentivizes them to pick the sheriff's office.
And so, Kevin, you are correct. It's 12 hours per month. So, and that's for the first 1 to 4 years. So they would accrue 144 hours each year that they're with us. They can roll up to a max of 320 hours in their bank. So that 144 mark would be the accrual for each year.
Okay. Kevin, so what was the balance this last year? I'm sorry if you already said that, between laterals and new hires.
I don't have.
I was just curious.
I could actually, I could find that for you pretty quickly and I could send that out.
Yeah,
to
just
you guys.
wondering.
Yeah.
It sounded like you did get more laterals than in previous years.
I believe we've been pretty successful. I think it's pretty even though. I think we probably hired just as many entry.
That data would be interesting.
I can get that from training and shoot that over to you.
And are you asking for this for 1 more year?
Yes.
It's on an annual rate. So, and laterals are good because then you don't have to do all the training. It's required of the new.
Laterals are quicker, and so that's why it's nice to have a mix, because you want people like me who were entry level when I got hired here and have enjoyed a 22-year career so far, and hopefully a little bit more. But and then you want people with experience coming over that you can plug onto the road faster. Generally they're not going to be here as long as someone who started their career, but you need a mix of both.
Good question. You have a number kind of like Chief Hooper did about how much has been paid out year by year.
For vacation.
No, for the signing bonus, because
Oh.
I'm kind of thinking of this as it's a, you know, it may have a indirect cost down the road a bit, but it is kind of a scaling back, right, of that policy and because of the success that you've seen with hiring. So I'm just looking for, if you could, you may not off the top of your head, but it'd be interesting to know for the past couple of years, how much has actually been paid out in the sign-on bonus.
I don't off the top of my head, but I could, that's more, I could get that.
Yeah,
because of- From
that'd be
payroll as
great.
well. Yeah.
Yes, the presentation we just received from the corrections officers. They had year by year, how much was paid out.
We've been absorbing, I think they're probably doing the same thing. We've been absorbing it in our budget, so. And we've been absorbing it with vacancies, which we just don't have. And it's all right, you know, like I think when I came back last year, I said it's not reasonable to continue spending the money when we don't have the, you know, amount of people that we need to.
They just did a
Okay.
chart showing.
Yeah.
Which was good.
And we're gonna be more because we've hired more people, so.
Right.
Yeah.
So, Shelley, if you could send what corrections sent over, that'd be great to Kevin, just so you can see what it is.
I'll work with Lisa when I get back there. I'm sure she can pull all those numbers.
Would you like this on your consent agenda next week then, in conjunction with the detention updates, or would you like me to wait to submit the sheriff's? How would you like this to look next week for consent?
But it's in how many years? Do we want the 2 or the 5 that's?
I mean, I'm okay
policy?
doing the 2. I just wanted to make sure that it was less than what you
would get if you were a.
through.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, but I like to have it 3 to 5 years. You get a tier, it'd be a tiered amount, but I think again, that's just gonna be a lot of accounting work on the side that is not worth the minimal cost of implementing it. So I'm okay doing what's being asked today, the 5 years or the 2 years with the 120 per sick and PTO. And then we just analyze it next year. And so we would want you to come back with more, the data to show how the money, how it's being used. So
we could compare like lateral hires last year, like if we had a comparison over multiple years.
It's, you know, I had a crystal ball, I would guess that the lateral hires are gonna drop off, and not because of an incentive or anything like that. Just naturally, I think are gonna drop off because people are kind of settling from all the turmoil and leaving their jobs and moving and that kind of thing. And we just don't have as many vacancies, so we're just not gonna process as many. And we want entry level applicants as well, so we're gonna process those too, so.
So yeah, so I would just have you put both of them on the agenda at the same time, Ashley.
Perfect, they'll be there.
Next.
All right, this one should be easier. This is the DEA task force funding. We get grant funding every year, and it covers overtime for the DEA officer that's assigned to the task force. So it's $21,740, and it just covers overtime for drug enforcement. The next is a vehicle use agreement between the Spokane County Sheriff's Office and Spokane Valley. I think a few months ago, we did a similar one of these where we loaned them a car essentially for them to use. We're proposing doing it again for 2 more vehicles, or I think the 2014 Ford Explorers, and they've been paid off, and the valley has paid for the depreciated value and everything, and we're just gonna turn them over to them temporarily for them to use the public works. They're having trouble getting vehicles, I guess. And this is just the agreement. There's some indemnification language in there where they have to insure and all that kind of stuff.
Okay, question for you, as long as we're talking about valley vehicles. I noticed that there's a cow parked at Dishman Hills, Applewhite there, that has the Spokane Valley.
Yes.
So did they make a couple of their own?
There was some made with Spokane Valley cars. I cannot tell you how the funding went as far as putting the cameras and all the equipment in. I don't know.
Could you look into that?
Yeah.
Thank you.
I've seen those too.
Yeah, sorry, Diane.
I've seen those too. I've seen the Valley.
So I just want to make sure that, you know. Okay, great.
Yeah, I wish Justin was here. I don't remember if they requested. I don't remember. I'll find out.
Okay.
I'll write all this down or I'll forget this.
Okay, the next one was the police position.
Yes, so in March 4th of 2024, city manager Holman sent requests to add 10 positions to the contract. In the request, it was sent to the budget office and the sheriff and I think the Board of County Commissioner. Well, it was sent to, anyway, we talked about how the hiring would go and we were gonna hire on a one-to-one basis, so we weren't just gonna hire all 10 of their positions. Well, now that our staffing is up, we realized that it was pointed out to me that we never came and requested these positions to be added to the budget. And you can see attached is we did instead of doing a fully loaded or full, we did a step 5, which is a mid-tier deputy. They're approximately $149,122 a year with pay and benefits, that's retirement and everything loaded in. So we were just asking the BOCC to increase the budget by the 1.491225 million to cover these positions because they're hired now and so we're not recapturing the cost of those because they're not in the budget. And this would be no cost to the county because the valley is going to pay for these positions 100%.
And that's,
But we need to load it in the budget.
that's the budget amendment resolution.
Yes.
I'm assuming it's a budget amendment resolution that we have.
Yes, we have a budget amendment resolution we're preparing for a couple of weeks. It'll be part of that.
Okay, that will show the increase in budget, but then the decrease, that it's a net zero.
Correct, net zero. It'll be both sides of the ledger.
And I looked today at the valley positions and they are 100% full, so they have declared.
Okay, and the valley, Jeff, as we put that resolution together, I just want to make sure the valley knows the numbers and that they've agreed to those numbers.
They're the ones that ask for them, but we will double check, yes.
I believe they are paying for these positions through the COPS grant, Jeff, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct. This is the first year of that 3-year grant
Yeah.
they have. So most of their funding will also be reimbursed this first year.
Certain parts of the county have had, and I don't know if you'll know this right, if there's something you'll need to look at, community events in other parts of the county. We'll use Medical Lake Days, for example. There appeared to be a Valley PD car out there on patrol or maybe doing some crowd control. Is that common? Maybe a reason for something like that?
I'd have to look what they're doing out there, but it could have been, so if a deputy comes into work an overtime shift, so it's possible that a deputy was working the medical like overtime and they would just use their car because anyone from the sheriff's office can go work overtime, but we don't make them change out their cars. So overtime shifts like one-offs can be covered by a valley deputy that they're working overtime for the county. So but I don't know if that's what happened, but I'm assuming that's probably why, because whenever I see the valley cars in the county, that's what they're there for.
Okay, thank you.
They're working overtime.
Any other questions? Okay, next.
Where was I? Okay,
Valley's back.
yes. So this is an agreement, with the new helicopter we just purchased. What's the name? It's
It's a big stuff.
yeah, well, I was asked to do this, but so there's a convention, it's APSCOM, or wait, I'm gonna get it wrong here. APSCON, and it's the National Police Air Association that Chief Ellis is part of. I believe he's the vice president, but they have a convention or a training in Phoenix every year. they pay to bring the helicopters, fly the helicopters down. They reimburse all the costs. They pay the flight time, they pay maintenance and everything for display. So Bell can display the helicopters at these events. This is an agreement for them to allow reimbursement so they can pay us so we can fly the helicopter down so they can use it for that event. So it will cover per diem, it covers wages, it covers the hotel and everything. So there will be no cost to the county.
Something were to happen. they cover.
Yes, there's insurance, yeah, they even have insurance information in here once, that covers the time, the term is July 13th through the 19th and they cover everything, so.
Like a PR for the
Yeah.
county.
It's good PR for the county, and like I said, Chief Ellis is, I believe he's the vice president now, and he'll be down there, and so, which his costs are all covered by them as well, so, it's just they like to do it for advertising, and Chief Ellis wanted me to present it to see if the county would be able to take the helicopter down there for those few days. I told him as long as it doesn't cost any money.
How long of a journey is that? I'm
It-
just thinking if there was a search and rescue and it was needed, I'm sure we can say, come on back.
I believe they do it in 2 days. I think they can do it in one day, but it's a long day. And so I think they stay overnight. I can't remember where the chief was telling me. It's somewhere between here and there. But they could actually do it in one day if needed, but it's a long day. I know on, Southwest was like an hour and 50 minutes. They go faster.
Okay,
Awesome.
you have enough. Okay, there we go.
I think that's it.
Okay,
And I'll get you that information. I'll go back and work on that.
thank you.
I'll check into the medical act thing too. Sure, Burns.
Thanks.
Take us to Tori. Good morning, Tori. Good morning. We're ready to go.
Okay, I'm just here to brief you on our county, our juvenile court block grant. This is pass-through dollars that we get from the state for, it is essentially our community supervision program. Our kids on standard probation, those getting sex offender treatment and chemical dependency and mental health alternatives. Generally, we don't have a dollar amount yet, so we're sort of under the bridge clause, I will say, but generally this is close to or at $1 million per shelf, so 2 million for the biennium. And just because I've been here so often around DECA funding and the state's lack of prioritizing it, I wanted to point out in this contract that this is for our criminal side. These are performance-based contracts now, and there are 2 of their 4 outcome measures have to do with school engagement. One is youth school engagement, and the other is high school graduation. So criminal side, they're prioritizing school engagement, but yet on the civil side, so interesting conflict there from the state, or contradiction. State. Any questions on this?
How much are these grants? I'm sorry, I'm not seeing it quickly.
Yeah, the amount is not in there, so we're sort of under the bridge clause right now that says, okay, we will pay you on last year's until we get your dollar amount. It is generally 2 million for the biennium, so right at 1 million a year.
Shelley. Okay, and you said it's performance based, so is it on reimbursement? Is there a certain cap?
Yeah, I mean, we get up to the amount, they're gonna give us our amount, and that is what we get, and there are administrative costs in there, we send them 819s and building, so yes.
Just curious, for the performance-based piece, how does that work in terms of the state asking you to hit those milestones? Does the formula change based on the performance or what is that?
Well, actually, the formula is based on, one is our kids' participation in evidence-based programs. It's our at-risk population, that is the census driven. And then low income factors in there. So it's census based, but 25% is based on our youth participating in evidence-based programs. So it is a formula that there is a lot of reporting done on this contract, a lot of sites and working states, a lot of quality assurance around that. So every youth on supervision in Washington State gets a risk needs assessment, and that data is stored at AOC. So that is what they will.
Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. Good thing.
Okay, I'm not gonna take it. I see Dan over there. Dan, if you want to come to the head of the table too, or Dave, I'm sorry. Not reading it. It says Dave, I'm sorry. Have you come down and we're gonna have you present on the noxious weed control board.
Well, I want to thank you all for the opportunity to present our noxious weed request, assessment increase request. First thing I want to introduce, this is Paul Pulick. He's the chairman of our board. And Thurman Johnson, he's our field specialist. And what I hope to do here is just give this little brief overview of how we're going to present. But I have Thurman give a little bit of background of the weed board, kind of really give you an overview of what we do. I don't ever really get a good opportunity to meet with you much more than, 5-10 minutes for budgets during the year, what we do and really our vision as to where we want to go with our program. And then I'll briefly, last slide, let's go over the requests that hopefully I think you probably have in front of you of what we're looking for. And with that, I think I'll turn it over to Thurman and let him go through this.
All right. Well, hi, everybody. Appreciate your time today. As Dave mentioned, my name's Thurman Johnson. I'm a noxious weed specialist with the Spokane County Noxious Weed Board. I know time's limited, so I'll do my best to be concise, but briefly what we're talking about, what I'll be talking about today is just an overview of what we do, why we do it, and how we believe we can improve upon the current programming we have in place. So we can go ahead and go to the next slide. So really starting with the basics, noxious weeds, they're harmful weeds. We have dozens of different species of noxious weeds that are listed in Washington State. All of them impact us in unique ways. We have noxious weeds that are directly harmful to human health, or help our pets, livestock, wildlife. We have other noxious weeds that impact fire on our landscapes, fueling increasingly severe and large wildfires. We have noxious weeds that reduce economic output through reduced agricultural productivity, through reduced recreational opportunity. And more often than not, a lot of our noxious weeds do many or all of those things. You'll see some headlines here on this slide. These headlines are coming from areas around the West, but these are all species of noxious weeds that we deal with here in Spokane County. So Spokane County is not unique in its battle with noxious weeds. It's something that affects counties all across the country. So go ahead and go to the next slide. Expanding on some of the economic impacts of noxious weeds, I did want to highlight two of the more widespread noxious weeds in Spokane County. This is coming from an analysis that was done by the Washington State Department of Agriculture, looking at a handful of noxious weed species and the economic activity that is at risk due to those species alone. Spotted knapweed, by their analysis, not presently, but accounts for a potential in $100 million in annual losses in economic output. That's cumulative damages to agricultural productivity, to
recreational activity. When you add all those up, the costs are immense. Rush skeleton weed totals by their analysis at $149 million. These are just two of the species that we deal with in Spokane County. On any given year, we're inspecting across the county for about 75 different species of noxious weeds. I do also want to highlight that while this analysis is statewide, you can see through the abundance maps that are provided that Spokane County, being one of the darkest shades of green, is one of the most significantly impacted by those two species that are, again, just provided as an example. You can go ahead and go to the next slide. And so ultimately, it's these impacts that inform our mission, which at its core is to mitigate the impacts of noxious weeds on the residents of Spokane County, as well as Spokane County's ecosystems, agriculture, and recreation. Consistent with that mission, we aim to eradicate new noxious weeds as they emerge in Spokane County and as feasible. We're also under no illusion that we alone can do that. And really, it comes down to our ability to educate and empower residents of Spokane County. And so that is also a core element of our objectives as an office. And to that end, we provide expertise on noxious weed management, control, et cetera, to individuals, agencies, companies, organizations, any landowners or interested parties in the county. Next slide. Briefly, I'll just touch on one of those elements I just spoke on, and that is our efforts to eradicate emerging threats to Spokane County. So those two species I highlighted, spotted knapweed and rush skeleton weed, those are very widespread in the county, very high impact across the county, but we have new species of weeds that are detected in the county on a near annual basis. And part of our mission is rapidly responding to those detections when we make them. An example being Palmer amaranth. Our office made the first detection of this species in Washington State, the second detection in the Pacific Northwest. And it was actually our office that was responsible for the listing of that species at the state level. We're currently in year 2 of eradication efforts, and it's looking as though we'll be successful in that. Just jotting down the line quickly, we also made the first detection of a new species of thistle in the Western United States. It's called marsh thistle. In 2024, our office also had that listed at the state level. So we are consistently moving the needle at the state level on noxious weeds that are on the radar of not just our board, but boards across the state. We initiated eradication efforts for that this year. And then another species I'll highlight is goat's rue. This is a new species of Class A noxious weed. That's the highest priority that the state has. And actually all of these 3 species are listed as Class A noxious weeds. To the letter of the law, that means that they are required to be eradicated. Goat's rue is a legume. It grows along moist soil areas. It's currently growing along the Little Spokane River. It's lethally toxic. All parts of the plant are lethally toxic to humans and all animals that we know of in our part of the state. Spreading very rapidly, but we are currently initiating our first round of eradication efforts for that. So, and then just a brief year-to-date update. We already have not considering those 3 that I just mentioned, we also have 4 new species of noxious weeds that were detected in the county just from the beginning of the year to now. So, next slide. And so what we're doing that's enabling us to make these detections is we are monitoring countywide. And what you're looking at on that map are points that denote the instances of noxious weeds that we've detected. But more importantly than those noxious weed points, and each different point displays a different species type, and the particular species is not really important for the discussion right now. But more importantly, what I want to highlight is each of those points is where we have created a notice and actually made contact with the landowner. And so we do this thousands upon thousands of times a year, and it's increasing year over year quite rapidly. Like I mentioned, we're tracking dozens of noxious weeds that are currently present and dozens more that are not present that we want to maintain vigilance for so that we can maximize the impact of control efforts. when and where we detect them. And then importantly, in maintaining our state of readiness and vigilance for these weeds, we're also communicating with other noxious weed boards across the state and across the Pacific Northwest, trying to maintain best practices and a clear picture of emerging threats. Next slide.
Yes, what's the time period for that map? Is that your 2024 map there, or?
Yeah, that is a map of our 2022 points.
But that just represents 1 year's worth of contacts.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Yeah. And I'll go into specific metrics right here, actually. So I do want to provide a brief comparison between when our assessment was last updated, which is 2014, and now using 2022 as a year for comparison. 2014, the county population was estimated at 484,000, just shy of 485. Our output in notices, again, these are the points of contact that we've made. So each of those points was at just over 7,000. As of 2022, that amount of contacts had doubled, essentially at 95%. And that was, at that time, the county population was estimated to be about 555,000. So even what may seem to be a relatively small increase in the county population does result in a lot more complexity in our interactions with the public and a lot more volume in our interactions with the public. And then briefly, what I also want to highlight on the right there is the proportion of high priority weed contacts that we are making. So class A's, which I mentioned are the highest priority of weeds that we have in the state. You can see that proportionally they've increased dramatically from 2014 to 2022. Class B designate, which is the second level of priority, has also increased significantly between those years. Next slide. And so ultimately why we're here today to talk to you about increasing our assessment is because we believe that a successful noxious weed program relies on a multifaceted approach. Currently, our program relies very heavily on our monitoring and enforcement, and we value that capability immensely, but we also see the need to build out other arms of our program in greater earnest. To highlight what we're thinking about, I mentioned partnerships, outreach, assistance, and training. Ultimately, it's connecting with the community of communities across Spokane County, making ourselves available as a resource, making information and current up-to-date best practices available as a resource, and offering financial assistance where possible, partnering with other agencies where possible, and even offering training to connect with the professional community. So it is, again, a multifaceted approach that we think is what's best moving forward as Spokane County continues to grow and as the nature of our noxious weed challenges continue to evolve. Next slide. Ultimately, what our needs come down to in meeting this is, at its core, it's experienced, educated staff. We need good people that we can retain on a year-over-year basis, folks that can maintain continuity across projects, across contacts with the public. Again, for interagency collaboration, we need people that can be a reliable point of contact. But beyond that, in implementing new projects, new endeavors for the office, we need dedicated funding for those projects. I also want to highlight that we have pursued grant funding in the past. We intend to pursue grant funding in greater earnest in the future. Dedicated project funding opens us up to offering higher amounts of match for pursuing grants. And so our intent with requesting, money for specific projects is also to open us up to pursuing higher amounts of outside money to bring into the county. And then, for those staff, for members of the county, and for implementing these projects, specialized tools and equipment, personal protective equipment, specialized implements, et cetera, are necessary if we are to have independent capability for implementing projects. And next slide. And so getting to the nuts and bolts of our proposed adjustment to the assessment, I am going to pass it back to Dave, our coordinator, and he'll dive into those specifics.
Okay, thank you, Thurman. And as you can see, I think it's self-explanatory of the people, Thurman being a good example of what we're trying to maintain and be able to afford to keep them on our staff. That goes without saying. Giving a little bit of history on our noxious weed assessment. About half, a little over half of the counties in the state of Washington are funded by assessment. The other half are funded through the general fund. Fortunately, we are funded through assessment, which started in 1978. As you can imagine, some of those counties that are funded through general fund, when you're fighting against, I shouldn't say fighting, but working with the, competing against the sheriff's department or somebody else in funding, it becomes difficult, especially in these times. But fortunately, in about 1978, we established this. And at that time, the assessment rates the classes were changed a little bit back then. And really what, I guess I should clarify class 1 and class 2 a little more what they mean. Class 1 is really farm type ground, production type agriculture. Class 2 is really everything else other than class 3, which is pretty much government owned parcels, irrigation districts, cemetery districts. In fact, we had back when I think early 2000s, we were assessing and realized that we were assessing cemetery districts. I think a pastor or called us up and said, well, I don't think you're gonna get any money out of most of the people I've got in the ground here. But so at that time, that's why we exempted the class 3 and the government. We exempted those that would be county, state, local government. Our reason for exempting them is the hope. And I think by increasing this assessment, I think we can make this really materialize. Was that the money they were going to be spending, pushing money around from one government agency to the other wasn't getting any weeds control. So hopefully they take that money that they would set aside for an assessment would be to, actually on the ground weed control. And that's kind of our goal, is to get the weeds controlled. We can all sit and talk about points and where we're finding the weeds, but ultimately it comes down to work all landowners, whether it be county, city, state, private landowners with weeds control. But in 1978, the assessment level was 5 cents per parcel, really for class 1, and 3 cents for class 2. As you can see, 2002, it changed just a small amount. And then in 2014, it was raised to 12 cents, 6 cents per acre with $1.80 minimum. Back when I started this in 1995, about 80 to 90% of all our time was spent on agricultural issues. Now, I would say a strong 90% of our time is spent on everything else. Agricultural, for the most part, we might spend 5 to 10% of our time out there. And that is kind of why the reason we're looking, as you can see, we're raising what that class 1 rate from 12 cents to 15 cents per acre. That's a smaller increase than the class 2. And we want to be, the way the law is written is we want to be equitable. And we feel our time is, or most of our time anymore is spent on that class 2 land, whether that be, a pasture type ground, somebody that has bought 10 acres, put a house on it, and there's 9 acres to take care of, or if it's just a residential lot, the city of Spokane. I hear sometimes people will contact and say, well, how does it affect me? I own a residential lot, everything's pavement, I've got my yard manicured. That's true. How many of you have bought topsoil or bought bark, and all of a sudden you got a weed growing out of it? Sometimes it's a thistle, sometimes it's something else. So in those instances, you are affected. You have a boat, you go to the lake, you take your boat, and look, everybody's probably heard of Eurasian water milfoil. Aquatic, there's different aquatic type weeds. People transport weeds. You get in your car, you drive down the road, you're picking up weeds that are being transferred. Had a gentleman that worked for me that actually inherited a water feature after a relative that died on the coast. Brought it home, put it in his yard, and all of a sudden he had one of those Class A noxious weeds growing in his yard because the soil that was left on that water feature took off in his yard, and luckily we caught it at that point and it wasn't able to spread. So I think everybody really is affected by noxious weeds, and our goal here is to of course increase our funding, and 80, I believe it's around 80 to 85, 82% actually is the amount of our dollars that we receive that are spent toward people. And actually we're looking at reducing that, but I know this kind of sounds a bit odd, but we're looking at reducing that to say 75%, because what we're trying to do is also incorporate those dollars on the ground weed control projects to get weeds controlled, but then also increase our staff. So we're kind of coming at it in two different directions there. And I feel that education is a key point that I think going down the road, we need to be able to educate, be able to work with landowners to get them to understand the importance of noxious weed control. Wildlife, for example, many people, I don't want to hurt the wildlife. I don't want to be spraying those weeds. I don't want to hurt the wildlife. Well, in all actuality, you let the noxious weeds grow, that's going to drive the wildlife out, because there's no value for the wildlife to stay there. So there's many reasons to get rid and work on a project too on people's own property to control the weeds, but controlling is just a start. Control the weeds. If you don't do something, you're gonna have more weeds. And so we want to develop plans for property owners, and this is gonna take time. It's not gonna, none of this happens overnight. And to move forward, we feel that's we'll be successful in doing that. And so as you can see, that amount would be the amount that we're requesting our assessment to be raised to, and we feel it's much more equitable with that $4 minimum also in there. As you can imagine, that raises our amount quite a bit just because of the tremendous amount of parcels. The math for us is now this year we have 5 inspectors, and as you know, we have 220+ thousand parcels. That math doesn't work. That being said, really there's no math that makes that really work well unless you have a staff of 1,000. But we're working to build the program, and we spent a whole lot of time going through it as a board to come up with this. We feel that this amount is something we can handle. We actually talked about, well, we need to go higher, and at this point we don't feel we have the infrastructure really to do that, and we want to be successful and efficient. And that's kind of where we came up with this amount. And with that being said, I know I can go on and on, but I'm very short on time, so I'll answer any questions, or will answer any questions you might have.
Paul, right?
Yes.
So as the board chair, I mean, assuming you guys have gone through all this and talked about this.
Yes. Quite extensively. I think
Yes.
we've looked at this for about a year. Yeah.
Okay, remember meeting farmers markets, so
Yes.
yes, so again, another, everybody who attends a farmers market benefits from all the work that's done. So how many staff, I guess the question is like, how many staff do you have now and what? You know, kind of as you look at trying to increase this, it's like, as you know, we get to budget each year. What is that change in budget and what is it helping you do? And you know, I'm on 10 acres, so I understand education is huge, very important. And I think need more outreach at like farmers markets and those kinds of things to people would be important. But so tell us what.
Right now, we have, this year, we have the staff. I guess I should go back. In 1995, when I started this job, we had a staff of 2 full-time. Up until this last March, we had a staff of full-time. And we run anywhere from usually 5 to 8 inspectors and seasonal type people that work usually from end of March into September. And what we did this March, we hired Dermot to work for us as actually a seasonal inspector back in a couple of years ago, and moved off to another position with another government agency. And we were fortunate enough to be able to get him back. And so our goal going forward is to kind of increase that staff, not dramatically as far as the permanent. We're hoping to go to, we're at 3 now, and we're hoping to go to 4 for sure, possibly 5. And then also be able to increase our seasonal staff. We need qualified seasonal staff. As you can imagine, with our job, it's not just driving around looking at weeds. With the enforcement capability we have, I mean, we have right of entry. We can go onto people's property. We're not going to go onto somebody's backyard, just, you know, without notice, of course. But we have that ability. So it takes, you know, training and a whole lot of training for identification and such. So we're hoping to be able to pay a more competitive wage. Up until really this last year, we've had to kind of step up because we were all of a sudden, you know, the car wash that's down the street there on Havana, they're paying more than we're paying a seasonal inspector. That doesn't work. It's unfortunate. And as a board, you know, what we've looked at, we thought about this a couple of years ago, but we were carrying a fund balance, and the board said, you know, it's great to have a fund balance. I mean, we always want to have money in reserve, but we were to a point, really, how can we ask for more money when we have some money here? So, I mean, we have, I don't want to say we've dedicated to reduce our fund balance, but we did reduce our fund balance just because of increased costs. And when I made this 2014, I committed to the commissioners and the such, everybody that was present, that it would last 10 years. And I feel we have made it 10 years, and I think a whole lot more happened in that 10 years, you know, especially the last 5 than we ever expected. So I feel we've been pretty fiscally responsible for the dollars that we received. And I know I'm getting long-winded in answering your question, so I apologize for that.
Just for me, I wanted to add that full-time staff, people we're gonna add as full-time will be the ones developing these outreach programs, control programs for landowners, educational programs. It's really hard to do those programs with part-time people. 2 people in staff is not enough to develop all those programs. So that's where the full-time staff additions are going to go, is to bring those programs out. And I think that's the important part. The whole board agrees that education, outreach, it's the important part of getting these controlled.
Thank you.
Can I, so as on your PowerPoint here, and you kind of touched on it, you know, as folks travel, if they have a boat, if they, you know, use the example of the water feature, but you try to make a strong correlation that it's increased population, you're gonna see increased weeds, or is it the increased population, people are just seeing the weeds? I mean, I'll use an example of if a new subdivision goes in, prior to the subdivision going in, I'm gonna bet you 99% that's raw dirt covered in weeds. When the new subdivision is built, there's gonna be a whole lot less weeds. You have the house, you have the landscaping, you have the lawns, shrubs, the pride of ownership that a lot of these new homeowners have. So, I mean, is population driving the weeds, or is population just driving more eyes that are seeing the weeds that were already there?
Yeah, I can take that. Yeah, higher populations mean higher complexity, right? We have a higher number of parcels of land that are under different management regimes, right? Each property owner is managing their land a little bit differently. And as you increase that, you have an increase in the amount of instances where people are willfully or woefully neglecting their property or are susceptible to noxious weeds otherwise. Another thing to consider is that when you have a higher population, you have a lot more people coming and going. And that is one of the main ways that noxious weeds take hold, is simply people themselves or their belongings or materials or otherwise, livestock, pets, etc., coming and going and exchanging plant materials with outside areas. That's just what happens when you have more people. Subdivisions, to your point, we actually have a number of yards that are in, what would otherwise be a manicured neighborhood that do harbor quite a few noxious weeds. Even if it's just one that's impacting the 25 homes around it, it's our capability to intervene that appeases and satisfies and ultimately protects those other 25 that are surrounding that parcel. And so even if it's just a small proportion in those examples, it still is creating an impact. It's also impacting the public lands that people use. It's impacting the public spaces that people use. Another thing that I want to highlight is that the development process that you're mentioning sometimes is slow, and it's sometimes interrupted, and it happens. Seems like every year that we have housing developments that have been cleared, scraped, and then left, and then they sit there. And even if they were weedy before, even if maybe they were a little unsightly before, when you reduce a large amount of land to bare dirt, you bring in heavy equipment that are carrying noxious weed materials, propagules, seeds, etc. You often have an explosion of noxious weed activity. And sometimes, without our intervention, those lots will sit, and sometimes 3-5 years go by before something happens, before the development actually occurs. But preemptively, the land has been cleared. And in the meantime, that proliferation of noxious weeds has escaped into surrounding properties, into surrounding homes. It's degraded the aesthetic value of the area surrounding those homes. So there are a lot of downstream consequences, even if that land is ultimately developed. If those parcels are left in a state of noxious weed proliferation for even just a couple or a few years.
I've had examples where orange hawkweed in people's lawns, in manicured lawns, beautiful little orange flowers, left uncontrolled, it will take over your entire lawn. That's all you'll have. It'll spread. So sometimes people don't know what they're looking at. And even though they're manicured lots, they mowed around the flowers. They were nice. So that's where the education part comes in, is to educate people what this is. Get it out of your lawns, or ruin your lawn, or spread to your neighbor's lawns. So yeah, a lot of that urban stuff is just they don't know what they're looking at.
We have people that will go out in the field many of our noxious weeds are beautiful.
Yeah.
Many people go out with a 5-gallon bucket and they'll be digging it out of a vacant lot somewhere to take it home to put it in a garden. Or they, like Paul would say, they would, there's this plant, all of a sudden it's 3 feet tall, it's blooming nice bluish purple, I'm just gonna mow around it. Well, what happens is they mow around it and then there's some bare dirt over here. Well, those weed seeds, I mean, they don't care where they move to, they'll move there. So I mean, education really is key. I mean, sometimes we drive by businesses. I mean, we even drive by our own office the other day. They were I think the corrections was out, maintaining outside the fence there. And there was a certain noxious weed growing out there that, you know, was big and it was looking pretty nice, so they just cut around it. So it took some education to, you know, that was happening, you know, 50 feet from our front door. So
2 years later, it's a sleeping trend with that weed, that's all there is. That's the thing with noxious weeds, they will take over.
Any other questions?
So we have to have a public hearing. Is that to the next?
Increase the fee.
Yeah.
If that's what the will of the board is, yeah.
So, and then, so the proposal, yes, there hasn't been an increase since 2014.
No, we did it in 2013 for the 2014. This is 2025. Will it be in effect for on 2026?
Mr. Michio.
Madam Chair, I've been working with the Weed Control Board with regard to this suggested increase in the assessments. And as I think Dave indicated at the outset, the Noxious Weed Control Board is required to hold their own separate public hearing if they are interested in increasing the assessments, which they have done. And then the law requires that they forward that recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners, which they've also done. And upon receipt of the recommendation, the board is required to hold its own separate public hearing after 10 days notice on the recommendation of the noxious weed control to increase the assessments. As a result of your own public hearing, Board of County Commissioners, you have three options. After the public hearing, you can accept the recommendation of the Noxious Weed Control Board to increase the assessments as identified. You can modify them yourself after the public hearing, or the third option, of course, is to forward back to the Noxious Weed Control Board the recommendation with the suggestion that they revisit their recommendation. And as Dave has indicated, whatever decision the board ultimately makes, they'd like it to be effective January 1st, 2026. So whatever decision the board makes should be done, if you can, in a timely fashion, so you can either adopt the recommendation, modify it, or send it back for further action by the weed board to come back to the Board of County Commissioners.
So just to clarify what you're saying, so a public hearing has already been held at the weed board at their meeting. And so now it's coming to us to then. Are we required to have a public hearing?
Yes, Madam Chair, we are, the Board of County Commissioners is required to hold your own separate public hearing on the recommendation by the Noxious Weed Control Board, even though they held their own public hearing too. And we have that notice ready to go, Madam Chair, and at the direction of the board, legal will simply place that on the next legislative agenda. And then at your 2 o'clock legislative consent agenda, Dave will be there to make whatever presentation you want and handle it as a public hearing.
I just, I'm just gonna, just kind of want to point out, I mean, I know this is an assessment, you're not a general funded department, but I mean, you know, when we're asking all other departments to look at a 7% decrease, kind of operate under their current budget for 24 in 25 into 2026, just kind of what was sort of, just be cognizant of what kind of message that sends to all the other departments when we're looking at this department and looking at kind of, you know, increasing theirs as well. And again, I understand it's an assessment, not general unfunded, but just kind of be cognizant of the optics of that.
I guess if I could clarify just a bit. We're not actually a county department. We're more like kind of an agency, a district of the county. So
understood, but you're coming to us at
I
a year
agree-
where
I agree
we
what
are
you're saying. I
at
agree
a
what
year
you're
where
saying.
we are telling every department, look at a 7% cut. So understood.
And I understand that, but we're also not asking our departments to hold it where they were in 2014.
I got you.
Yeah. Okay.
Did you receive any good feedback at your hearing?
We had one person.
Oh,
Okay.
well.
No, but they did actually provide value.
Yes, they did.
Yeah, and
Some ideas.
the feed, just briefly, the discussion that person introduced was they felt it was really important that we are able to maintain greater levels of communication with entities that are managing right of ways throughout the county. Particularly the state is who they were talking about, and that's a hugely bandwidth consumptive task for our office, is identifying all of the points throughout all of the right of ways. Yes, across the whole county, and then not only communicating the instances of those noxious weeds, but then following up to ensure that the work is done to, you know, our satisfaction. You know, that takes a lot of time, a lot of resources, and so I found that it was a really relevant piece of input to the discussion.
Yeah, and I guess, you know, that's kind of my question is the Tishman Hills and what we choose to do on our properties, you know, what, so. So question for another time, but I'll ask that because it's important because as we talk about people hiking and dogs and all of that, they're up on these properties and picking up, you know, weeds as they're going out into the area, bringing them back to people's, so.
And unfortunately, if there was a magic bullet that I could come in and tell, you know, a landowner or me or anybody that it's once you have noxious weeds that here's this magic bullet, we're gonna get rid of it and it's gonna be gone forever. You know, at best, it's a 3-year plan. And at worst, it's probably a lifetime endeavor. Really, you know, noxious weeds and weeds themselves are gonna outlive us all. But we need to, you know, manage them. And unfortunately, that takes resources to do.
We have the Centennial Trail, having that weed overlap, so you have half the path and the other half, both sides split down the trail. Yeah, so I mean, that's the kind of effect it has on everyone who uses recreational property. Since you can end up with just.
Madam Chair, then, I will place on the next available legislative consent agenda a notice of public hearing with a date that the clerk of the board advises that we would consider the recommendation of the Noxious Weed Control Board. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Thank you all very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you for your thoughtful questions.
Nice to see you.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Okay, are there any miscellaneous items? Because I know we have a long executive session ahead of us.
For executive session items, if we are ready to move beyond miscellaneous items. The first one is anticipated to be 5 minutes. There's no action for all 4 of these. They're all pending potential litigation. The first one for Scott Simmons, Matt Folsom, Devin Curda. The second one, 10 minutes, same group plus Chris Anderson. The third, 30 minutes, Scott Simmons, Devin Curda, Jeff McMorris, Matt Folsom. And then the fourth one, again, 30 minutes, Scott Simmons, Matt Folsom, Jeff McMorris, Kyle Tuig, Devin Curda, Jim Amacio, Dan Gadd, and Pat Bell.
One of them potentially the sheriff.
And the sheriff, if he's available.
Or
the third one.
just in case.
If it's risk related, should I also be in it, Matt?
Which one?
One with Dan Gadd in it?
Absolutely. For the fourth one, adding Ashley Clapp.
Okay, but I think, so we're only. Is everyone in person?
I think everyone's in person.
And Ashley's not in person.
Kyle's not either.
Kyle's not either.
Yeah, so he's in the last one too.
Okay,
So I'll have to.
so do we do
in the back?
the last one first, so we can
Yeah.
then cut off the video? Okay. So I propose that we do whatever the last one is first. You know, so that way we then, at the end of that executive session, we will stop the video.
No, Pat won't be on.
Okay, Pat's in the last one as well,
Which we're doing first.
which we're gonna now do first. So,
Okay.
Fourth is now first.
so,
The first time.
yeah. Okay, because then all the others.
All the others are offline. Yep, everyone will be.
Okay, so we will go into executive session for those reasons just discussed. We will do the last one first, which has the most people in it that were listed. No action will be taken at the end of that executive session. We will lose the Zoom link at that point, and all the others will be in person here in the room. So we're looking at an hour and 15 minutes total for executive session. And at the end of that, no decisions are expected to be made, and we will adjourn for the morning and see everybody back for our 2 o'clock. Thank you.